Videographer, it is our biggest fundraiser of the year. It is also an incredible opportunity for us to gather as a community and connect and enjoy each other's company. With your help, we have already raised $46,444. Which is incredible. And I gotta say thank you for all of those who are bidding on our auction items. It kind of takes the pressure off. That doesn't mean don't donate and don't bid. We really appreciate it. But it means that we can celebrate this evening, and we are already almost to our goal of $50,000. We have close to 200 items in our auction that you can bid on. If you were like, I thought it was just storytelling, I didn't know there was an auction, and you want to learn more about that, technology is not my strong suit, but we have some folks in the lobby that can help you if you need help accessing the auction. And then the auction goes until noon tomorrow, and we have some beautiful auction items in the gallery. So if you want to check out some of those in the real life, not on the screen, we encourage you to do that. And then if you're like, I don't need any more things, and just would like to make a donation to grant communities to support our incredible programs, we love that too. And there are many ways to donate. We want to take a moment to thank our amazing sponsors. The sponsors really help us to put this event on, to help us to have so much of the donations from this event go to our programs. So our sponsors, Arizona Raft Adventures, Underwriter, R&A Auto, Artisan Metalworks, Save Adventures, Fratelli's Pizza, Lumberyard Brewing Company, NARMA Institute, National Bank of Arizona, Natural Channel Design Engineering, Parch Non-Alcoholic Cocktails, and Wildland Trucking Company. We have an incredible lineup of storytellers for you tonight. And so before we jump into the stories, I wanted to share a little bit about this event and the idea behind this event. Why tell stories? In this highly technological world where we spend so much of our time on screens, working, socializing, etc., it's really wonderful to take a moment to pause, like we do on a river trip, and listen to stories, share stories, and connect. And it really does, live storytelling has a kind of magic to it. And so we are, each year we choose a theme, and the theme this year is resilience. And I wanted to unpack resilience for a minute, because the definition of resilience, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is the capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulties, toughness. So resilience is not a fixed trait, but rather a dynamic process involving learning behaviors, thoughts, and actions. So in a lot of ways, resilience is like a river trip. It's not static. And so providing opportunities for young people to discover their resilience, as well as all of the adults who are lucky enough to get to be on these expeditions with these young people, they get to discover their resilience too. And that is a cornerstone of GCY expeditions. Additionally, Indigenous communities, including those from the Southwest, practice resilience every day within the systems of oppression that exist to maintain social hierarchies. We acknowledge our presence on their land as we at GCY work not just in words but also in action to reduce harm and inequity. May we practice and learn new ways to cultivate resilience for the land and Indigenous communities. Tonight we are pleased to welcome the 6 storytellers who have offered to share their stories. Out of respect for these storytellers, put yourself in their shoes, right? Up here in front of a community of their peers often, please turn off your phones and try to refrain from talking or getting up unless needed. So our first story comes to us all the way from Australia. And Jeffe Aronson, who goes by Jeffe, he guided on the Colorado River river in Grand Canyon for 25 years, 15 of them rowing dories. He was a founder of Jumping Mouse Camp in 1992, which connected youth with disabilities to the river. He has been a river guide all over the world for 47 years, starting in 1976, and is currently president of Friends of the Mitta, a nonprofit that helps inspire communities for local river runners, and also does the Mitta River in the Australian Alps. He's built an off-grid micro, hydro, and solar-powered dream home in Australia on the banks of the Bundara River, where he and his wife Carrie currently live. Jeffe Aronson.
Hi, my name is Jeffe Aronson. People call me Jeffe. And I was a river guide for 47 years of my life. Very lucky man. Started in 1976 and retired professionally anyway in 2019, although I've been still boating, luckily enough. And 25 of those 47 years I guided in the Grand Canyon, and 15 of those 25 years I was lucky enough to have rowed dories, which is magic. So, you know, this little podcast is supposed to be about resilience. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about my history. I started in California with a volunteer group called ETC, Environmental Traveling Companions, on the Stanislaus River and the American River. And we did trips for kids with disabilities at first, and it ended up being kids with disabilities and kids at risk. We called them Hoods in the Woods. And that was a really cool story because it was just basically kids with disabilities, you know, blind kids, paraplegic kids, some high-functioning quads, cerebral palsy, multiple sclerosis, you know, some pretty intense stuff. Deaf, some pretty intense challenges. And we did those trips pretty exclusively for a while, but then we ended up, serendipitously, we ended up with a trip that was kind of light on those students. So we had a request from a group in Oakland of some black kids, some African-American kids who had been in trouble a lot. And we kind of thought about it, but then we went, you know what, that's cool. You know, sorry, I've got my timer here for the 8 minutes. That's cool, let's give it a shot. We'll fill up the trip with these kids and see how that happens. In the beginning of that trip, you know, these kids from Oakland, they were pretty intimidating, and they just stand there and they refuse to help and, you know, just look at us and give us the stink eye, you know, and just basically tell us, you know, don't even look at me sideways, mofo, or, you know, you're in trouble. So we just went, hey, you know, we're just river guys. We're here to introduce you to the river and take you downstream, and, you know, it's okay, whatever's cool. And we watched these kids over the 3-day trip, and in the beginning they just stand there and stare and, you know, have an attitude, basically. But then we watched these disabled kids, some of whom were blind and would be led down to the riverside to wash the dishes. This is back in the old days. And, you know, some of whom would crawl down the beach and wash dishes, never asking for help, just doing it out of the joy of being outside and being on a river after having never thought they'd ever be able to do such a thing again. And slowly but surely, we watch these kids from Oakland, you know, just sort of meander over and go, let me help you with that, you know. And by the end of the trip, they were washing all the dishes, and they were doing all the cooking, and they were helping each other out. And in the end, they were sobbing when they had to go home because they were so in love with these friends, new friends they made on the river. So we thought that was really cool. So ever since, those mixed trips have been happening. Anyway, I went to Cataract Canyon after that because they drowned the Stanislaus River under a river reservoir behind a dam. And so we worked in Cataract Canyon on the Colorado River up in Utah, on the upstream side of Lake Powell, for a couple years. And then I came down with a bit of a case of the big C, cancer, metastatic, which means it spread all the way up through my belly and lungs. It was testicular cancer to start out with. And yeah, it was a pretty intense year. And I had a half a dozen surgeries, big major surgeries, where they kind of take your intestines out and put them on your chest, and go in behind and take your lymph nodes out, and took a piece of lung out, and took this and that, a bit of intestine. It was pretty wild. And then they gave, in those days, they had some of the most intensive chemotherapy known to man, and so it really knocked me around a lot. But what kept me going was the fact that I loved the river so much, and I loved my colleagues so much, and the camaraderie. And I'd finally found something I did well in my life. That dream kept me going, and I was lucky enough to survive and make it back and row rivers again. So after that, I moved up to the Grand Canyon in 1981 and rode rivers in the Grand Canyon for a number of years. And about, I think it was 1987, Canyon Exploration started, and I was hired as their first manager. And I wanted to tell you a little story about Ray. You know, Ray Interpreter Jr. was one of our guides, and he started out with Grand Canyon Youth. And he had been a bit of a troubled kid, and you know, couldn't find his place in the world, and didn't really know where to go and what to do. And he'd lost his older brother to a crash, and so you know, he was just kind of lost. And I was in the office one day, and Ray shows up and you know, he says, "Hey man, I'd like to row a boat for you, you know, in the Grand Canyon." And I said, "Well, can you row?" You know, and he said, "Well, yeah, I row good." And then I said, "Well, are you 18? You got to be, you know, 18." He goes, "I'm 18." And so I said, "Well, yeah, we'll put you on a baggage boat and give it a shot." Well, old Ray, he turned out to be my best friend and the best man ever to work with. He would just touch the oars, and the boat would sing. It would go exactly where he wanted it. And not only was he a top-notch boatman who could put his boat wherever he wanted it, but he just had this sixth sense that not many people have, where, you know, like I would be rowing downstream and just about as lead boat and just about to go into a big, huge rapid, and it's important to have a colleague right there to help you out if there's trouble that's close. And I'd turn around, and 99 times out of 100, there'd be Ray right there with a big smile on his face and his war whoop, and woohoo! And or we'd be on the beach in terms of soft skills, and I'd look over and I'd see a client that needed help with their tent, or I'd see somebody in the kitchen that needed help, you know, making coffee or whatever, and I'd just barely glance at what needed to happen. And then just before I had a chance to even turn around to ask one of the guides for some help, Ray would already be there doing it. He just knew he was a beautiful man. And so the next spring, he showed up in the office again. He goes, "Hey man, I'd like to row a boat for you again if I can." And I just stared at him, and I said, "You want to come back and row?" And he just kind of looked at me for a second, and I said, "Ray, you're the best boatman and best friend I've ever had. Of course you could come back and row. I'd love to have you. You're just the greatest ever." And he goes, "Well, thank you, man." And he started walking down, then turns back and he goes, "And by the way, this year I really am 18. Soon after that, a couple of years after that, I came down with yet another little fun challenge called Guillain-Barré syndrome, or GBS, where I was nearly paralyzed for an entire year and in excruciating pain. And once again, what helped me get through that challenge was the fact that I wanted to be back on the river. I needed that river, and I was going to make it happen. And I really fought hard to get well again, and luckily, you know, the fates had it. I got well again, and I got to go back to the Grand Canyon. And I'll never forget my first trip back after being out here, where I didn't know if I'd ever even walk again. And we hiked up one of my favorite side canyons in the Grand Canyon, Stone Creek, and got up to the top, my favorite waterfall, and I was just sitting there, and I was pretty glad I had my dark mirrored sunglasses on, because you know, I had tears in my eyes, and I was just sitting there so grateful for whatever you would call it, the gods, fate, destiny, luck, whatever you want to attribute it to, I was just really grateful to be back in my home in the Grand Canyon. And so, that brought me through another challenge, and then when I had Guillain-Barré, I just would think to myself, if I make it through this and I make it back to the Grand Canyon, I want to give something back to the Grand Canyon. And so, because I made it back, I tried to figure out how I could give something back, and I remembered how I started, which was as a volunteer, taking disabled kids down rivers. And so I took on the challenge of taking disabled kids down, and adults, down the Grand Canyon, which at the time it was unheard of. And so we started Jumping Mouse Camp, and I got a lot of my colleagues and friends and a lot of river guides to come down and help, because it was a lot of hard work, but boy, was it ever rewarding. And so, after a year of some pretty intensive politics, unfortunately, we got it through, and now disabled river trips is just something that happens, and nobody even thinks twice about it. It's a beautiful thing, it's a lot of hard work, but it's really emotionally satisfying, and so I'm really grateful to have had a part in that play, if you will. And so, here I am at 71 years old. I retired at 65 in 2019 at the end of my 47th season, and I was pretty lucky because the next spring COVID hit. We live in Australia now, and Australia locked down for 2.5 years, no international flights, so I would have been stuck away from home. And then the next year I got leukemia. So, lots of little challenges here and there, but, in the end, resilience is about your inner strength, your willpower, your dreams, making your dreams happen as best as you can, and playing whatever hand you're dealt. That's important to be able to do that, because some of us are dealt hands that don't go away, like I was lucky enough in my life to have most of my challenges go away. But you know what? It's also about your colleagues, your friends, your family, the camaraderie. Because every single time that something happened to me and I was trying to battle my way through these challenges, people showed up out of the woodwork to help me out. And I wouldn't have made it without them. So, it's about the love you make as well as the love you take. And just like the old Beatles song. And so, I think it's important to remember that it's all about your friends, your colleagues, your family, your comrades. Make it happen. Thank you.
Cool to have guides from a different era kind of sharing their past and their stories. Our next storyteller is Amy Martin. And Amy Martin has worked in many different capacities at Grand Canyon over the last 22 years. She started as a park ranger in 2003, followed by working conservation science, river guiding, including with GCY. She's on one of our all-Indigenous trips this year, and currently as a photographer and storyteller. She's grateful for the solace and community that she finds at the canyon, especially on the river. Thank you all so much. The canyon and the river have helped me through so many hard times that it was really hard to kind of narrow down the stories about resilience. But I thought a good place to start would be with the river herself, right? The embodiment of resilience. She has endured so much. Dams and droughts and diversions. And everybody wants a piece of her. But she still persists. She nurtures life in so many forms in this harsh desert environment that we live in. Not only that, but she energizes us. She nurtures our spirit. She inspires us in so many ways. And so I just wanted to first acknowledge her and give her, a round of applause. Thank you, River. Now on to us human beings down here. I think one of the most beautiful things that the river
to us. And it reflects ourselves back to us in a more truer form. What do I mean by this? Well, if we are coming down on the river or into the canyon and we are pretending we are something we are not, we have pretenses, we have all this armor, she is going to break us down, right? She's going to peel us like an onion until we get to our core. And this is a beautiful thing that she does, and it's a hard thing. But she does this by holding us accountable. And she also gives us grace. And I learned about these things very early on the river in my first couple of years by making some very poor choices initially. The first one was the first watercraft that I self-propelled through Hans Rapid was actually a piece of styrofoam. This had been washed out of the LCR, and the folks on my trip were like, Amy, you know what would be a good idea? If you held on to this piece of styrofoam that kind of looks like a bat wing, and you swam through Hans Rapid. And I did it. And the river gave me grace for this. Like we've seen so many times, right? Like, people don't know what the heck they are doing down there. And the river gives us grace. The next time that I went down on the river, I was rowing an 18-foot raft, very standard. This is my first time rowing the entire river. And I had passengers on this river. Not only that, I had a group of VIPs that had flown in from all over that needed to get down through the canyon in 10 days. And so, the river granted me passage down to Crystal. So at Crystal Rapid, when I think of Crystal Rapid, I always think of my dear friend Shanna Wadahamaji, who took me down the canyon, over 20 years ago. I miss her so much. Just an incredible woman. And she would tell me, like right above Crystal, that this is where the spirits of the river were the loudest. This is where they were the strongest. And so when I would ride down on her boat, I would sit in the bow, and she would tell me, Amy, you have to yell at me so loud because I don't want to get distracted by these river spirits. And so I would sit in the front and I'd yell super loud. Of course, she would make it through. But so there I was. I had never rowed a boat through Crystal. I had passengers, not only that, they were all VIPs just sitting around my boat. I was kind of like, what the heck am I doing here? It was high water, it was an August trip, and I, of course, started out too far left for the pull. Water was going too fast, didn't pull fast enough. Into the hole, into the drink. Luckily, my boat didn't flip, and also luckily, as one of my passengers would tell me later, my foot, with my sandal still on it, with my flip-flop, was just like sticking right out of the river for an extended period of time, right next to him. And he said it was like kind of waving at him. So he was able to do the most natural thing and just pull me back in. So I got back in my boat very quickly, but then where was I, right? I'm like at that crossroads between the left and the right run. And of course I'm doing this because, indecision is disaster. Like right, left, and where am I going? Right into the middle, right into the rock garden, right where I don't want to go. And that was kind of expected, right? But the unexpected thing was that, and I think about this so much, I've been thinking about this, every time I go through Crystal and many other times in my life. I felt the river, lift me up, and this is crazy, but it, navigated me through that minefield of rocks and boulders, And it was of no fault of my own because I was totally worthless, right? I was still like right or left. And yeah, she delivered me, like peacefully, sort of, down to that right-hand side, like halfway down the rapid. And this was one of the first times that I saw this like duality of the river, right? This holding me accountable, and then also this giving of grace. And these are the two of the most important building blocks, I think, for building resilience, right? Like accountability and grace. So how has this helped me in my more deep, like personal life? Well, here's my sweet family. My dad, my sister, my mom, and me. I'm the one in that external frame backpack right there, square head. So I really credit my parents with taking me down into the canyon and instilling, creating this place that I've gone back to time after time. That's been a constant in my life. This picture, this is my mama. This is her on the river in 1972. She wasn't a guide, but she loved the river, she loved the canyon. This is her catching a giant rainbow trout out of Bright Angel Creek. And this was in the winter of 1978. I was born February of 1979, so you can do the math. And actually in this photo, I am just hidden by that gray sweater there. But yeah, the canyon is a very special place for my mom and me in our relationship. Sadly, about 15 years ago, my mom was very sick. She had breast cancer, and in 2011, she ended up dying. This, of course, is a very hard time for me. And I was away from the canyon a lot, helping her through her illness. And then aftermath, of course. And I didn't grow up with any religion. Like, I grew up with an extreme, void of religion. So there was no playbook, there's nothing that told me, how to process all of this or anything to fall back on. And so it was a very hard time that shook me to my core, and I was very lost. During this time, both when she was sick, and then again after she died, I had these crazy, vivid dreams, and they were reoccurring dreams. And they were dreams of the canyon, specifically the river, specifically me getting down to the river and sitting by the river's edge and, listening, to the river noises, smelling the smells, all of these things. And they were so powerful that I was like, there's definitely something there. There's something that I need to listen to. And so a few months after she died, I went back to the canyon. I listened to this. I was like, this is too strong. And that over that next year, I spent the majority of my time down in the canyon doing all sorts of different things. I spent it on the river. I spent it hiking and fishing with my dad. I spent it doing conservation work. And it really helped me, and it helped me in so many different ways to process these things that I couldn't find anywhere else in our society. And so the gifts that it gave me were first the space to heal and grow, right? So the space that we can't find really in contemporary society, with all of the hustle and bustle, with all of these distractions. It gives you the space to be quiet, to turn inward, the perspective of where we are in relation to everything else in this greater world. It demands that we be ourselves. We already talked about this, right? Like, it will hold us accountable if we go in with pretense. It will narrow us down, it will carve us down to our core. I chose this photo because that is my dad, up there in the corner, who is always 100% unapologetically himself, for better or worse. So there he is. Empowerment, of course, this kind of goes without saying. There's so many challenges that we face, but we build up and grow from each one of these. Connection, right? So here we have connection. For me, that connection back to that natural world that we're losing every day. Connection back to each other. This is a photo, I think, from about 10 years ago, 8 to 10 years ago, from a GCY trip. The support that we get, these connections that we build, the relationships that we forge in this place along these journeys, there's nothing like it. It is so important, it's so beautiful. In these years in this time that I went back to the canyon after my mom died, I have gotten best friends in the entire world. The river has given me that as a gift. I feel so lucky. Also, it has connected me back with people who have known this place since time immemorial, and I feel honored to keep learning from them. And for me, specifically, it has given me purpose in a lot of different ways. That I do conservation work, specifically with fisheries, photography. It helps me connect to others, maybe others that have never seen Grand Canyon and that may never will, but that we can help encourage advocacy for this beautiful place of ours. This middle photo is from this summer. It was from a GCY trip, helping foster the connection for others to the canyon, to the river. It's also, it is just one of the best things. And last, there's me and my daughter down at Anna. And I want this place to be here and be accessible to her so that she has the opportunity to grow and to heal and to be held accountable, to be her truest self, and to build resilience. And that's what I'm trying to instill in her. Of course, she's going to do whatever she wants because she is very strong-willed, but I feel like I am setting that stage for her. So my last story, this one is very short and very quick and fun. Also, I didn't feel like I could be up here telling a guide story without starting it out as, there we were. So, there we were. This story is about resilience that is built through community, through teamwork of guides. And so, this is a long time ago. Hopefully the statute of limitations on this story has passed because we made some very poor decisions. We got ourselves in a real pickle, but we got ourselves out of it. So, two things were going on during this time, during this day, actually. I was guiding a trip. There were, the other guides had all been guiding, amazing, had thousands of trips among them since the 70s or 80s. I did not know what I was doing on that trip, but there I was. And it was an art charter. It was an off-season art charter. And there were two things again. One was that we had photographers on this trip, and they wanted to catch the golden hour at the confluence. And the other thing that was going on was that it was going to be full moon. And not just that, but it was going to be a full lunar eclipse that night. And so half of the trip really wanted to stay at the confluence and get those last photos, and the other half wanted to get down to Tanner so that they could see the full moon rising, the eclipse over Comanche Point, over the Palisades. So, we did something shameful. We split the trip. I know. We learned our lesson. So I stayed back. I stayed at the confluence with one other boat while the other 3 boats went down. And it got darker and darker because, of course, we left way too late. And strangely, it seemed as though there was everywhere, every camp we passed, it seemed like there was a trip. And we're like, that's okay. They're going to make it down to Tanner. It's going to be fine. So, of course, we pass over Tanner. Somebody's there. Go around the corner. Yep, you guessed it. It was not our trip there. In fact, it was the Dories. And I remember this because I remember getting heckled. But of course it was like a well-deserved heckle, right? Like we're rocking up it. Yeah, looked like pretty much like this. So fortunately, right, it was a full moon. Unfortunately, it was a full lunar eclipse. So it was like this red line around the moon, so dark. So we saw a couple of headlamps over on the left-hand side, left-hand shore. We're like, oh, this is probably just the campers at the camper beach. But then I hear, Amy. So we're like, okay. So we pull on over. And who pops out of the bushes but Martha Clark. Martha Clark Stewart at that time. If you don't know her, like, just amazing. One of legendary, one of the pioneering women guides in the canyon. I think her first trip was in 1978. Just a force, a total force to be reckoned with. And she was one of the other boatmen on this trip, along with her partner, Thad Stewart. And so she's like, yeah, so we're down below the rapid camped. It's like, yeah. And so I thought she was going to jump on my boat and take my oars and row us down from, like, memory, right? She's done this at the canyon so many times. So I was like, get on board. And she's like, Amy, you're rowing. I was like, oh, shoot. But she stood behind me in the boat like John Wesley Powell and yelled out instructions to me. And in the front of my boat, I had the sweetest, most wonderful young woman who was an assistant on the trip. And she had a headlamp on her head, and she had a headlamp in her in her hand. And Martha's in the back, and I'm rowing, and none of us can see, like, our fingers in front of our face. So, of course, heart racing, everything. And the same thing with the other boat. There was somebody in the front with the headlamp, Thad in the back, and then the boatman rowing down. And we made it! We made it down! Thanks to, Martha's yelling at me. So we just camped in this like funky little cobble spot right down below Tanner. And I just always think about that, right? I think about these 3 generations of women, right? We have assistant, me, and Martha, in this boat in the blackest black you could ever imagine. What the heck, to have a full lunar eclipse at this very moment. But, we made it. And that just, to me, is how we build resilience within community, within this guide community. And we can get ourselves out of almost anything. And for me, I just feel so grateful to be a part of this community, to be here with all of you. So, thank you so much.
For sharing your art and your stories with us, Amy. That was beautiful. Soak in the images and the stories. Our next storyteller this evening is Delaney Cook.
and I'm going to tell my own. So I had the pleasure of meeting Delaney as a participant on a GCY trip about 10 years ago. And the Secretary of the Interior, Sally Jewell, was on the trip. And it was so great because it had to be like top secret because there was a famous person. And so Delaney and a bunch of her peers showed up and we're like, there's a famous person on this trip. They're like, Beyonce? Nope. And then it was like, Sally Jewell, and they're like, who's that? And it was so wonderful because Sally got to just be on the river and having a great time, and I got to meet Delaney. So that's a little story. Delaney is from Northern Arizona and is currently a teacher at Verde Valley School, and has worked as a guide for GCY for a long time, and is also a dear friend of both myself and our family.
Hey, I promised myself I'd start with a deep breath. So. Well, thank you for trying. What an honor and a journey of resilience it is that I'm able to stand up here and do this tonight. Because the person that I was before growing up through this organization could have never imagined addressing a crowd this large, let alone full of people who I deeply admire and respect. So I like to think of myself as living proof that what we do as an organization, as guides, as alumni, as donors, as people that love and care for Grand Canyon matters. It really matters to teach youth that their voice matters, and I am proof of that in doing this here tonight. I used to get up in front of classrooms and panic and shake and not be able to get my words out and cry, but I now call myself a teacher and a guide, and I have grown so much just by way of being a part of this organization. So I have a poem to share with you all tonight that I'll introduce and talk more about in a second, but I wanted to share a piece of my heart and a little love letter to GCY from that trip. This is a journal entry from that magical trip with Emma just about a decade ago. And I wrote this there. So it's up there, but it's kind of scribbly, and I'll read it to you now. So, June 19th, 2016. I got behind the oars today. It was really awkward at first, and still sort of is, but if I didn't think about it, the easier it became. I talked to Quill, Ryan, and Justin up Buck Farm today. I'm learning how to tie up the boat and to help with what I can. Everyone is really gentle and encouraging. They let me think that I could do it too. That I too could join in the fun. That I too could belong. I love it here. The massive walls, the solace, the canyon wrens. Everything is captivating. All is inviting. Come crawl to me, the desert whispers. I wrote that at 17. Yeah! I share that because this place, likened to Amy, has really held me for many years and holds us all. My point in sharing that is that I think the youth bring so much wisdom to us on trips, and they teach us just as much as we hope to teach them. And that's one of my favorite things about GCY trips, is I always walk away transformed and grateful and really held by that space and loving what I get to learn from our wonderful participants. So in that theme, this year on a Partners in Science trip, I asked everyone on the trip to give me a one-liner of advice, and I promised them I would weave it into a poem. So I did just that, and I gathered their advice up, Tuck Up, and by Fern Glenn, I had a poem that was kind of a collective chorus of wisdom of all of our voices on the trip. So I used their words verbatim. Some were really silly, others were salient, but it came together kind of magically in the way that river trips do with all our strengths and skills. And so I want to share that poem with you all tonight. Again, there are lines in here that are verbatim from 16 wonderful youth, 6 guides, and 3 scientists. It's called If I Could Give Advice to You. And I'm going to stand over here. If I could give advice to you, If I could give advice to you, I'd tell you to breathe, be gentle, and think it through. And if I could give advice to you, I'd first think of all the things I thought I knew, and when I did, I'd know it'd come through, that only the simplest things were the ones most true. I'd tell you, my friend, when you're anxious, you must know that the wisest ones always go with the flow. I'd tell you, don't sweat it when guano happens. Tomorrow isn't promised, so dig for the heavens. And when you're feeling disgruntled, remember everything has balance. Friday is only good because Mondays exist. And when you're feeling angry, don't pet a burning dog. Pick your battles and pause. Get up. Start over. Even when sore, keep moving. Disconnect to reconnect. Let today be your rest. And know that all anyone can do is their best. So stay open to change. Be positive. Have fun. And know that there's time for everything under the sun. I'd remind you when you feel lost, eddied out, disconnected. We are of the earth as apples are of an apple tree. So dance, be silly, be a frog, just be. I'd remind you when you feel lost, eddied out, disconnected. Oh, I just read that. Sorry. You should skip rocks because it's fun and don't wear shoes too often. And remember, my friend, to listen when wisdom comes a-knockin'. An old chap once said, don't throw out your chickens before they're dead, for life is a journey to bed. So don't fear death, fear not living, and always go listen to what the canyon wrens are singing. Go to guide school, they harmonize, they whisper, then shout. Live life to the fullest, there's no reason to pout. For eddies are safe, but you'll never get down river sticking to the eddies, and there will always be a time when you don't feel ready. But just go for it and leap, saying two to make it true, for fear is only the unknown, and you can always start anew. And I think I'm nearing the end of my advice to you, but while I have your attention, don't forget to play, for really, my dear river friends, all we have is today.
Thank you, Delaney.
Great poem. That's all advice that we can incorporate into our daily lives, I think. Don't pet a burning dog is one of my favorite lines. We are getting ready to head into a short intermission, but before we do, I want to take a moment and remind ourselves that resilience does not always mean that everything works out how you want it to. If you just work hard enough, there are no guarantees. I'm sorry. This year we lost a beautiful, resilient member of our river community. Laura Fallon was a Grand Canyon River guide, including lots of trips with GCY. Thanks, Julie. Take a breath. She was a yoga instructor, mentor, sister, daughter, auntie, friend, and storyteller. She embodied the spirit of resilience with her love of the river and of life. She had many stories of resilience, and we wanted to share a short one with you now in her own words.
So I tell this story right before Fishtail Rapid. Fishtail is about mile 140-ish in Grand Canyon. And just before we get there, we're in this pool above, and I always ask, has anyone ever heard of Molly Ivins? The funny thing to me about Molly Ivins, much like many people that I've taken down that were famous, I didn't know anything about her. And for those that don't know her, she is, or was, a political writer. But she didn't really talk about politics a lot down there. It was 2006. That trip was very special to her because she had gathered all of her closest friends, and she was having this big final hurrah. She had her final session of chemotherapy the day before she jumped on her trip. They were very nurturing to her. I remember getting to Upset Rapid, pulling over, and we only had one motor rig tied to the boat, and everyone piles off. And she went and set her stuff down, and literally they created this horseshoe around her, just like this zone of safety or something. It was really beautiful. So when you enter Fishtail, you enter it on the tongue, and and that's where that initial drop into the rapid is. But it's smooth. There's not much to it at the beginning. And then there's maybe one little splashy wave, and then you can see it as you're approaching it, this huge wave. You know, everyone knows on the boat you are going to get soaked. And if you don't hit that wave, no big deal. You can skirt it really easily. And often in an oar boat, I would. But in a motorboat, you can hit it. And you can hit it hard. And so I said, what do you guys want to do? You want to go big? And of course they all yelled back or sounded, yeah, go big. And I turned to Molly. She was up in the front left of the boat. I said, well, Molly, you know, this is a really big rapid, and especially the way we hit it on the left, it's going to be huge. And she said, Laura, she turns around to me, and she has this very dead serious look on her face. She's like, I said, go big. I said, okay. And so we kind of set up the front of the boat so that she would be taken care of. So we went into the rapid, and I hit it really hard. I mean, it was just huge. There was water everywhere over the entire boat. It was awesome. And she went flying over the person above her, and he grabbed her, and everyone grabbed him, and she just started laughing. She was so happy, and I knew it was a good thing, even though I was scared that I was going to lose the poor woman off the boat. After the trip, I got a call from one of her dearest friends, Sandy, about 6 months after the trip. Molly had indeed passed. She said, just so you know, Laura, she talked about that run with Fishtail until like the day she died. That it was one of those moments in her life where she felt she wasn't babied. She was asked if she wanted to go big, and when she said yes, everyone supported that and made that happen. To this day, every time I run Fishtail, I tell that story because it reminds me, no matter what is going on in your life, no matter how difficult things are, no matter how fragile you may feel, if you have people around you that support you, you can go big. You can do the things that you really want to do in your life.
As I think has already been alluded to in a couple of the stories, I think community nurtures resilience even through our grief. And in Laura's memory, her family established the Laura Fallon Memorial Fund, which to date has raised over $43,000 from family and friends near and far to connect kids to the rivers and canyons of the Southwest. And we are humbled and so grateful to get to continue Laura's positive impact into the future. And I kind of feel like she was with us here tonight a little bit. We are going to take a short intermission, and you can use the restrooms. They're over here. Do my best airway pilot. Grab some more food and drinks. There's merch. You can check out the hot auction items, and there are people in the lobby that can help. And we're going to be back here in about 15 minutes. And I want to tell you, you do not want to miss the second half of the story. They're as powerful as the first half, and get to hear from some other incredible folks. So please stick around and take a breath and hug someone in your community. Thanks so much. So welcome back. I want to give a quick update on where we are on our fundraising goal of $50,000, and we are at $48,359. That is so incredible.
Before we get back into the incredible 3 stories we have left this evening, I wanted to give you a little update about how things are at GCY. I want to do it somewhat quickly so that we can just get to stories. And you're here because you want to learn about GCY and what's going on. 2025 was an incredible season for us in a lot of ways. I want to give a huge shout out, and I'd love to give a huge round of applause to the incredible people in the office and the field staff and the trip coordinators, the scientists who just make our trips possible. So huge round of applause to all of them. And if you don't know, we do trips starting with 5th graders. We work with 4 elementary schools in Flagstaff where every 5th grader goes on the birdie, which is so fun. They paddle their own boats and sometimes just turn around and float. It's really, they're some of my favorite trips. We have set a goal this year of not trying to do more, but trying to keep it consistent, sustain it, and understand the impact. I mean, you're hearing some of the impact already this evening, and we're wanting to continue doing what we do and not get too fancy with it. Some of our season highlights. We distributed over $110,000 in direct financial aid, which is huge. And so if you don't know, if you're new to GCY and you're like, well, what does that mean? That means that in addition to offsetting the trips by close to 70%, we distributed an additional $110,000 in financial aid. And so we really try and make it so that cost is not a barrier to participation. And that takes a lot of money and donors like you to make it happen. So thanks so much. I like the 54 returning and 7 new expeditions because I think, again, in that sustaining, like building relationships with schools and teachers and coordinators and government agencies takes a lot of work. And to make the trips better, if we keep doing them, they help to get better. We understand how to improve them and grow them. And then there's always some room for some new expeditions in there as well. I think that, Rhea, are you in the audience? I'm calling you out. You see the waving? We worked with an incredible PhD student from NAU this summer. We were wanting to understand, how technology affects young people and being away from technology, especially cell phones, affects young people. Because now, even in the canyon, you're not away from phones. The technology is there now. And so on GCY trips, we've kept it where it is a choice. Like we say, please do not bring your phones, and you're going to have some time away. So we did a pre and post to understand technology as it relates to loneliness and connection. Really incredible work, and so it's great to have Rhea here tonight. So looking downstream, because at this time of year at GCY, we're always like 1 foot in 2025 and 1 foot in 2026. We've already started putting expeditions on the calendar for 2026 with a lot of our groups and schools that we work with. And our individual expeditions will open soon. The government is shut down, as we know, and we work with a lot of government partners. So we need to the government to open up so we can get our trips open. And then, as I mentioned, we really want to sustain and understand the impact of these expeditions. And just for funsies, before we get into the stories, I think youth are at the heart of what we do at GCY, and the alumni. I've been here 22 years, and so it's wonderful. I love connecting with the alumni, and so if you don't mind the call out, so if you do, you could just sit quietly. But if you are an alumni, if you could raise your hand and kind of wave it around, you can see who's here tonight. So thanks so much for sticking with us and staying part of our community, and all of you for being part of our community. Okay, without further ado, we're going to get into our next stories. Thanks for that time and that little catch-up. Our next storyteller is Tyler Williams. I've had the extreme pleasure of doing several GCY trips with Tyler over the years, and he's an incredible GCY guy. And he maintains a day job as a freelance writer with 8 guidebooks and over 100 articles in his archive. He has paddled over 400 rivers worldwide, including 30 first descents and 7 source-to-sea journeys. Between adventures, Tyler lives in Flagstaff, Arizona with his wife, Lisa, who's also a member of the GCY community. Tyler, are you ready?
Thank you, Emma. And before I get going, I know Emma just thanked so much for the support, but how about Emma? I mean, two other quick stories. This is totally off script, but it is occurred to me as the night's going on. So I was on that trip with Delaney and Emma and Sally Jewell 10 years ago, and Ryan was on that trip. And we go up Canal Creek, and we're hanging out under the ledge, and I hear the guitar playing, and I think, oh, Kate's playing another song. Love Kate Aitchison. She's a strummer. And I hear the music starting to play, and I'm like, whoa, what? Did someone bring a boombox? What is that? It's all this funky. I'm not a musician, but it was awesome. And I look around, and Ryan Am has taken the guitar, and he's completely detuned it. And he is just jamming. And it was just like, whoa, what? And he hadn't even presented himself as a musician. He just hadn't even played, I don't think, to that point. So, what an amazing talent. And then I did one trip with Laura Fallon. It was a GCY trip. It was a Diamond Down. And it was a group from Globe. And they were a great group, super helpful. And on the last morning of the trip, I overheard their conversation. They were devout creationists, and I think maybe that had come up in the conversation of geology as we were going downstream. So I had a really great conversation with one of the trip leaders, but I'm pretty sure they weren't like yoga enthusiasts. Laura had them all, like, doing yoga on the beach, and they were so into it. So wow, what a spirit, and what a wonderful force she was. My show is this presentation is about 2 years ago I ran the Yukon River from source to sea, and it's an interesting thing about the Yukon is that it starts only like 20 miles from the ocean here in the Juneau Icefield, and it takes 2,000 miles to get to the ocean. That's pretty interesting. And it's kind of full of lakes here at the start. You got Atlin Lake is the largest lake in British Columbia. It's this one right here. Beautiful place. Tagish Lake, Marsh Lake, and Lake LaBerge, and then and then it's pretty good current from below Lake LaBerge to its northern apex here just above the Arctic Circle. And then it's quite flat and wide to the end. And there's virtually no white water on the river, which partially explains my choice of boat, which was the 13-foot Miro craft purchased in Sun City. You can see I buffed it out a bit for the Yukon. I put the bumpers on and proper river oars and oarlocks, and SMR made me this great cover. And most importantly, a motor. Because I was not going to paddle 2,000 miles in flat water. So I started out on this trip up here, I did use a pack raft at the source, but then as soon as I hit Allen Lake, I used the motor to get across the lakes. And then below this point, below Lake LaBerge, is rather swift to here. Not as swift as we anticipated. Lisa could tell this story a little better, but Lisa joined me in Whitehorse, and we went to Dawson together, and I didn't quite have adequate fuel because I thought it was going to be really swift, and it wasn't that swift. So we kind of half rode, half motored to Dawson, and then Lisa flew home from Dawson, and I was going to be solo at that point for the rest of the trip. And one of my biggest concerns was fuel at that point, because I only had so much capacity, fuel capacity for the boat, and the longest section between fuel stops is right in here. It's the section called the Yukon Flats, and Fort Yukon is a little village right here, and the next place you can get fuel is where the Dalton Highway crosses the river, and so it's 186 miles. So I had to make sure I had enough gas to get me 186 miles. The problem being, Fort Yukon had a terrible reputation. Everything I read and everything I heard about Fort Yukon, located right here at the northern point on the river, was that it's a drinking town, there's a lot of theft, do not linger there, beware. Even the villages around, adjoining on the river, up and downstream of Fort Yukon, the people call it Fort Yuck. Fort Yuck. So I was concerned about leaving my boat while I went and got fuel and groceries at Fort Yuck. So anyway, I wasn't sure how I was going to deal with that, and I started down below Dawson solo, and I wasn't solo for long. I ran into these two guys, a couple of nice Frenchmen, Alex and Pierre there. I saw Alex. On the Yukon, it's such a big river, like you see something in the distance and you get your binoculars out. What the hell is that? And it was Alex, and then I determined he's in a pack raft. Someone in a pack raft. So of course I had to talk to this guy. And we started chatting, and he said my friend Pierre's up ahead, and so I thought, I'll hang with these guys for a night, break up the trip a little bit. Well, I ended up spending 9 days with them. They were great company. And I also was, looking forward to having them as backup at Fort Yuck to help to guard my boat while I went to get fuel in this horribly terrible village that I'd heard about. So we made it to Fort Yuck. It's a Gwich'in town. The Gwich'in tribe is closely connected to the porcupine caribou herd in northeastern Alaska. And they're also very proud of their temperature range. Second in the world, by the way. Number one is Verkhovyansk, if I'm saying that right, Siberia, who's gone to 90 below. But that's a Russian record. I don't know if we can trust it. Might be Fort Yukon's the champion. But we stopped in Fort Yukon, and we pulled up to the shoreline, and there was a woman in the boat next to me, and she was sponging out some water, and I said to her, where's the fuel in town? Can I get fuel? Can you tell me where I can go to get some gas? And she started explaining it to me, and she said, I can't tell you, just go ask her. So I go up the hill, and I meet Samantha, who's standing there with her four-wheeler. And Samantha goes, yeah, hop on, I'll take you to the gas. So I jump on the back of the four-wheeler. Her daughter Kinsley's riding on the front rack. They drive me down to the fuel tank. We fill up. We come back to the beach. I've got my fuel. I need groceries now, and I wanted to call Lisa because cell phones weren't working, and I thought maybe I'd call from there. A white Ford Bronco pulls up. Pierre's in the passenger seat. The guy driving rolls down his window and says, Tiger, what do you need? How can I help? I'm thinking, I kind of like Fort Young. This place is all right. So the guy behind the wheel was this gentleman here. Bruce Thomas is his name. He's half Wiccan, half white. His grandfather was a Mississippi boat river captain who moved to the north in the 20s and married a native woman. And he had, and they had 9 boys. Bruce's uncle lived in the wilderness with the family until he was 27 years old before he moved into town. And Bruce was just, I mean, you can imagine what would come of that, right? This guy, he spoke with a real, kind of like a Canadian A accent, but he had his own twist on it. It was kind of like a ha! And he would finish every sentence, he'd say something like, you know what I'm going to do, Tyler? I'm going to make some moose soup today. Ha! Just finish everything like that. This guy was endlessly entertaining to hang out with. And then just that pattern just kept going. We ended up camping there in the town park for the night, Pierre and Alex and I in our tents. The town manager showed up with a 5-gallon jug of water. He says, I heard you were here. Here's some fresh water. Other locals would show up and, what are you guys doing, man? This is so cool. I mean, it's like the friendliest town I've ever been in. So yeah, we spent the night, and then the next morning, you know, Pierre was going to hang. Alex was flying out. He was ending his trip there. The reason I included this slide, other than the be kind message, which is really the theme of Fort Yukon, is this junk show we got with the PFDs here, which is caused by the wind. The wind had come up that night, and while I should have, you know, heeded the warnings of the weather and the wisdom of the locals, I was bound and determined to keep going to the sea. And so the next morning, I feigned as much confidence as possible and set out. You can see in this photo, it's not that bad here, in my defense. Those waves are not big. But 2 miles downstream, they were big. And I'll spare you the drama, but I propped a couple times. I started rowing, and I realized the waves are going upstream, the river's going downstream, I'm not going anywhere. And I finally made it to a gravel bar, jumped out, grabbed my bow line, hiked upstream to the nearest shelter, and pitched camp. And I was here in this lovely, lovely camp for 3 days. While Pierre and Alex were enjoying foot races and baseball games and all sorts of revelry over the 4th of July weekend in Fort Yukon, I was in my tent with that view. And so I guess I learned, getting back to the theme of tonight, the resilience of these people. And it wasn't just Fort Yukon, it was every village I stopped in up there. It became my favorite part of the whole trip, was I really looked forward to stopping in these villages because these people were so friendly and so welcoming. Every time it was like, hop on my 4-wheeler, I'll get you to the water, I'll get you to gas, you want some moose soup? They were just wonderful people everywhere, and they're living in the most desolate place. Like, they were already, this is mid-July, and they're already talking about winter's coming. You know? And I mean, it's flat, it's buggy, it's sprucey, and they're just like so upbeat. And I think just existing there and having that attitude shows such resilience. I was just so impressed with the native population in northern Alaska. After 3 days at this camp, the wind finally died, and I jumped in the boat and I ran back up to Fort Yukon to resupply all the food that I had during that time. And it was like I was the Revenant coming back from the dead. Tyler, you're alive! And they brought me Bruce's wife found me in the town park. Bruce is going to want to see you. She drove me to the house. Bruce was just getting his 4th hour of sleep after the 4th of July celebration. She rousted him. I would not have been in a very good mood at that juncture. Bruce, in true form, he jumps out. Tyler, we gotta get you to the store. You gotta go downstream, huh? So, of course, I spent the morning driving around Fort Yukon with Bruce because we were an hour early. The grocery store didn't open until 10. And he finally got me there, and I set off again. And I guess it's a little bit of resilience, but nothing that compares to those people that I did make it to the ocean 2 weeks later.
Thanks, Tyler. The story, another trip that we were on, the story that came up as you were telling that story, is you remember when the motors broke on that Diamond Down trip?
Yes.
Yes. And so, I think, Richard Cordova was on the trip. Anyway, and then it was like, well, what are we going to do? Are they going to bring in motors? And Tyler and I looked at each other and we're like, we're going to row. And we rowed, and it was great. No problem.
Sang songs.
Yeah, we sang songs. The kids were great. It was awesome. Oh, thanks, Tyler. Our next storyteller is coming to us all the way from California, but is a huge and long-time member of this community, and one of the first people I think I met in Flagstaff when I moved here. And I'm so grateful that she gets to share her story tonight. Michelle Grua is a pediatric anesthesiologist, medical acupuncturist, and writer whose work explores science and spirituality, particularly after the death of her husband, Kenton Grua. Welcome, Michelle. There's more. This lady has shared stories on the Moth, which is the inspiration for this event, has appeared on numerous podcasts and served on the board of the Rail Foundation. And we were like co-MCs at a wing date like a long time ago. Anyway.
We were much younger than that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hi. Well, when my husband Kenton died unexpectedly in 2002, my grief threw me into what we all would call a forever Eddie. 1 minute, he was alive and life was great. The next minute, I was spinning in circles while everybody else just continued downstream. And you guys know that getting out of an Eddie takes a lot of work, but getting out of a forever Eddie takes fierce determination and 2 good oars. And without Kenton, I was rowing with 1 oar. I couldn't go forward, I couldn't go back, and I couldn't get out. And I wasn't even sure if I wanted to get out, much less if I wanted to continue practicing medicine. What I did want was to continue to be a part of his world, this world, right? And I'd had so much fun doing river trips with him and having him teach me how to row a little bit, that I decided to go on the guides training trip so I could become a Grand Canyon River guide. And when I arrived at the Lee's Ferry boat ramp, I was super excited, but I was also kind of nervous because I knew that there were some massive rapids waiting for me downstream. And I was most worried about Lava Falls Rapid because, I mean, honestly, if you're going to be afraid of any rapid, it's the one that has the word falls in its name. So on the day that we would reach lava, my anxiety grew with every stroke I took. And I had to keep rowing, so of course it kept growing. And to make matters worse, the guide who was mentoring me that day talked non-stop. And she went back and forth between telling me how to run lava and telling me how much she hated to swim rapids. While just kind of casually mentioning the fact that the only time she'd ever actually had to swim a rapid was when somebody else had been rowing the boat. Cool. So as I made my final approach towards lava, I was pretty anxious, but I had Kenton's voice in my head, and it helped calm my nerves a little bit, and I could hear his very clear instructions. I remember him saying, you gotta hit the V wave straight on, and when you enter the rapid, you have time for 3 good strokes, and when you take that last stroke, get your oars forward, get low, and hang on. Well, I did exactly what he said. I looked up, and I was dead center on the V wave, and I was thinking in my head, I'm like, yeah, baby! And then just at that moment, the right side of the V just exploded and sent our raft up on its side and dumped us both into the river. And as I went flying through the air, all I could think was, oh man, she's gonna be so pissed. But I didn't really have time to worry about that because I went deep. And I was starting to run out of air, and when I got to the point where I'm like, ooh, this might not work out. You know, I feel like I'm running out of luck. My life jacket brought me to the surface, and we both crawled back into the raft. I got back on the oars. She took her spot behind me, and for some reason, she was a lot less chatty for the rest of the afternoon. But I felt horrible. But I did get a chance to redeem myself a few days later, rowing 232-mile rapid. And not surprisingly, I had a different mentor for that day. And it's a pretty straightforward rapid, except for this nifty little geologic feature at the bottom of the rapid, which is these 2 big giant pieces of schist that stick straight out of the water, and everybody calls them, very poetically, the fangs. And my mentor, I was very grateful for the fact that he was a lot less talkative than my previous mentor, but he gave very clear, very concise instructions. He just said, stay off the fangs. Okay, duly noted. Well, the first wave at the top of the rapid filled my bucket boat, made it too heavy to move, and turned it into a runaway train heading straight for the fangs. When you're standing on an ancient piece of schist in the middle of a river, having just postage stamped your raft onto the fangs, and having dumped yet another mentor into the water. Sorry, Kevin. You start to question your life choices. And in that moment, I didn't really have a lot of choices. I could stay on that rock with my broken raft, or I could jump into a churning maelstrom of water and swim like hell and hope that I made it to shore. And honestly, there was no choice. So I screwed up my courage. I jumped as far as I could away from those rocks. I swam like crazy. And when I made it to shore, I was met with hugs and back slaps. And honestly, I felt more alive than I had in months. Well, I had a lot of epiphanies on that trip. Number one, I learned that I should definitely keep my day job because I'm a much better doctor than I am a boatman. But I also learned that just like at lava, there were going to be days where I feel like I'm drowning. But if I just hold on long enough, I'm going to come up for air. And I also learned that just like standing on that rock in the middle of the river, there were going to be days where I feel like I'm stranded and all alone. But if I just take the leap, I'll get back in the current, I'll go downstream, even if I just have one arm.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Hey, we're to our last story of the night, and I kind of want more stories. And so we'll be here next year. The last story of the night that we're going to see is a video, but the person who created this video made it tonight.
Mariah Zavala is here. Okay. And she does a great job introducing herself in the video, so I'm not going to introduce her in the same way, but I'm going to share a story of when we first met Mariah at GCY, and we were doing an insurance update. So it was like the insurance company comes in and tells you, like, and here's your plans, and da-da-da. And that was Mariah. And after, and we all fell in love with her right away, and afterwards she was like, can I get some kids from my community on one of your trips? And we were like, yeah. And then she worked so hard and had this dream and has done it. Not once, but a couple of times. Don't cry, you're making me cry. And so, yeah, she just, on the water, she mentors 11 to 14-year-olds as they build their confidence, community, and a deeper relationship with land and river, and carrying those lessons to homeschool, family, and future. So, without further ado, this is Mariah's story.
Lasachanyabu Kechamalea, Inepo Mariah Zavala. I am Mariah Zavala, a member of the Pascoyaqui tribe, and Oaxacan and Puerto Rican. I'm the program director of SPL Sports Inc. and the founder of the Pascoyaqui Tribe Rafting Experience. In our communities, for me and for my family, the term resilience is a very common word in our vocabulary, and it is so much more than enduring hardships and overcoming barriers and challenges. It is a means of survival, especially in our communities. My mom was a single mother that worked multiple jobs, orphaned at 12. I am the granddaughter of a murdered Yaqui woman, and resilience has been in our genetics, in my ancestors, and in our journey for a very, very long time. Watching my mom work so hard growing up as a single mother and taking care of me and my 3 siblings taught me that love can sometimes look like exhaustion. It can look like working double shifts, but it is still showing up, and it's being there, and it's being present, and it is resilient there. And on the river is one of the first places where I learned how to exhale and not feel that exhaustion and really embrace the aftermath of healing that comes from resilience. And so, after 2 successful trips, thanks to our partnership with Grand Canyon Youth, and thanks to our funders, and thanks to our grit and tenacity to continue bringing this program to our reservation, we have now evolved it to the Anya Collective. Anya means world in Yoemet, and we want it to be the Anya Collective to remind our youth that they have a place in this world, that they have a place in their communities, and that there is a place for them to have their dreams come true, and to be part of this community, and to remind them that they're worth and part of something. The collective is a continuation of what we begin on the river, and we're so excited to see how it expands and how we can continue nurturing and creating opportunities for these youth once we get off the river.
As Manuel Zuna, I am 13 years old, and I go to Marcos Zaniza, and I'm coach from Guadalupe.
Awesome! All right, Manny, we've gotten to spend the last few days together, and it has been so much fun, but everybody has been calling you Unc and not Manny. Can you tell me why they're calling you Unc?
They call me Unc because I was born in 2011. My birthday's on August 20th, and they think I'm 14 right now. I'm not.
Still 13. And Manny, what was the most fun part of this trip for you?
One part was when I got to be on the double ducky with James.
And what's a double ducky?
It's a playable raft.
Ooh, a little raft? Is it like a big boat or is it like a kayak?
A kayak.
Okay, and the double ducky, that means that somebody else was with you.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more what it was like on the double ducky.
It was kind of like, it was fun. It was fun because we have one person steering and one in the engine, and it was pretty fun. We communicate together, and they made it fun.
Yay. If I was one of your friends at school and I said, Manny, what did you do this summer? What would you tell them? How would you describe your summer?
I would tell them that I went kayaking. It was pretty fun. We went to swim. I was swimming in the river, and I get to hike and everything.
Yay! And do you think you want to do this trip again, Manny?
Yes, I would love to do this trip.
You think maybe you'll apply again next year?
Yes.
And what would you tell other Pascoyaki kids about this trip?
To apply and like come have fun, so they can get out of like the home and everything.
Yay! And did you like the food? What was your favorite food on the trip?
I like all of them.
All of them? A lot of our kiddos had never left home, or if they had, it wasn't for an outdoor experience. Some of them hadn't even hung out at the community swimming pool. Our first year to really recruit and gather the kids who wanted to be there. They were so scared. They couldn't even fathom the idea of rolling out mats and sleeping under the stars. And it was so beautiful to see the fear and the anxiety and the apprehension they had that first day to the third day, where they were playing with the oars and they were rowing, they were singing, they were laughing, they were teasing the guides, and they were like fish by the third day. You couldn't get them out of the water. So as challenging as it was, it finally came to fruition, and we got our kids out on the river to show other kids what was possible and what a beautiful experience it could be.
My name is Santino, and I school is Preston. I'm coming from Tucson, Arizona.
And how old are you, Santino? 13. All right, Mr. Santino, you have been doing a lot of different jobs and doing a lot of different things on this trip. Could you tell me your favorite part of the trip?
Favorite part? It was probably helping making dinner with them.
Really? What did you guys cook?
We cooked spaghetti and bread.
Why was it your favorite part?
Because I really just like the experience of cooking. I mean, I want to start cooking, so I start.
That's awesome. And Mr. Santino, is this a trip you think you'd want to do again? And tell me why.
Of course, I mean, like, it's a great experience. Like, some people don't get to experience this, and I really like it. And I like swimming, and when I heard camping, I like camping too. So I like camping. I'd have to go in there.
Oh, yay. Tell me one thing you learned on this trip that you're gonna take back home with you.
I definitely learned a game. I forgot what it's called. I think it was called Chumba.
Oh, Chumba. In the camp, we've been hearing everybody call you Grandpa, and you've got that walking stick there. Can you tell us why they call you Grandpa on this trip?
I think it's the first day that you guys picked us up.
Okay.
After that, I think we were making our camp and we went to the bouncy house there.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I think I have my hip on my left side, on the left side, and yeah, I think I have my left side, or my left side, and pop my back. And I was all limping like this, all limpy. Then I found this mysterious stick out of nowhere.
Every trip teaches me that resilience is so much more than just passing through the storm. It's the ability to laugh again. It's a 12-year-old boy realizing that he's a 12-year-old boy and he gets to just be a kid. It's generations of pain, meeting the flow of the river and choosing to let go. It's even the 29-year-old woman healing the 12-year-old girl in her and letting go of that pain and breaking generational trauma and cycles of pain that have endured in our communities. Jeffe Aronson, thank you to Grand Canyon Youth for believing in this work and in our young people. It is my honor to share this story, and I hope it reminds you that the river still has time and room for us all to heal.
Thanks so much, Mariah, for bringing and sharing and kind of taking us to the river as a way of closing out tonight. That's all. Thanks. Thank you. So we are at an end of stories tonight, and so we're going to take a few moments for some gratitude. And before we get there, I wanted to check in, speaking of gratitude, check in on our fundraising goal. We are like a couple $100 away from $50,000, which is incredible. Humbling, and it's like the icing on the cake. I would just listen to stories, and then that's just icing on the cake. Thank you so much. On your way out, since the auction does not close until noon tomorrow, we have these incredible wooden boats, and the Olo, Jim McKenzie rode that boat on a GCY trip when we did the Dantalese Ferry, so it's been on a GCY trip, that boat. So check out the cool boats out there, and we would love to get those to good homes. Again, want to say a big thank you to our sponsors. Couldn't do it without you all. The business community in Flagstaff is so incredible. So grateful for them. So next time you're in any of these businesses, just tell them thank you. Thanks for supporting GCY. We want to call up all of our storytellers who are here tonight, and we've got a present for you. So if you could come up, we'd love to give you a big round of applause. Sharing a story with all of us. And I want to thank a previous storyteller, Mike Buchheit, who donated these gifts for our storytellers tonight. If you are interested in telling a story, we would love to have you. Sometimes it's the most stressful part of the event, actually, for me, is finding the storytellers. It was a really hard year for me personally this year, and these storytellers, it was magical. They came out, and it was, I could not imagine a better group of storytellers. Let's give them one more. The phone. There are a lot of people behind the scenes that make this event possible. I want to give a special shout out to Uriah Lee, who's on sound in the back, who is also a GCY alumni, and John Propster, who has volunteered his time to video this so that we can watch these stories again and again. Thank you so much. Jay, Julie, and Danny at CCA. I think this is my favorite year working with CCA. They've been just incredible to work with. So thanks to them. And Caitlin, who volunteered her time at the non-alcoholic bar. That was really wonderful this evening. Huge thank you to all of the GCY staff. You all are amazing. I love working with you every day. Our incredible board members, and all the field staff who are here tonight. So board and field staff, we couldn't do it without you. So, woohoo! As a reminder, the auction closes tomorrow at noon. So if you are a winner of an item, you'll get an email and a text message, and you can pick up your winnings starting on Monday. Please wait until 9. There's been a couple of years where they're
We're ready. We want to. Yeah, huge thank you to all of the auction donors. Almost 200 auction items. Like, it's incredible. So thank you so much to all the artists and writers and people who have donated. And then at the very end, a huge thank you to all of you for coming tonight and sharing these stories with us and giving your attention to these incredible storytellers. We're so grateful to be part of this community. Travel safely. Have a great night, and thanks for helping us. I'm sure we're going to meet our goals. Thank you so much.